Hi, I'm David Smith. Our quest to capture the essence of entrepreneurship in Silicon Valley brings us today to Mountain View, the home of Agitar Software. Agitar was formed by Alberto Savoia. Get this, Alberto left his stock options and his job at Google to form a technology startup, Agitar Software. Let's go inside and find out how Alberto managed to raise venture funding, assemble a winning team, and how Agitar Software is really shaking things up in the software development space. Okay, Alberto, how did you find yourself in this technology entrepreneurship business?
Well, I was born in Italy, and I came here when I was 17 years old, and I immediately fell in love with Silicon Valley. Knowing that this was the birthplace of companies like HP, I decided I want to live here. So I decided to leave Italy and become a US citizen and become more specifically an entrepreneur in Silicon Valley. I think this is what I was meant to do. And I've been very fortunate because since I started, my first startup, I was living in San Francisco with my father. And in fact, the first VC I ever had was my father, who invested in 1982 $5,000 to buy me an IBM PC, which for us was a lot of money at the time. And I started my first company called Hagen Corporation that made video games, and that was quite successful. We started receiving, there's nothing like the feeling of going to a PO box and getting checks. No, these are pre-internet days. And so from that day I was hooked on entrepreneurship. Hagen was acquired by a company in Minneapolis, but I decided I didn't want to live in Minneapolis because I visited in January, probably not the best time to make a good impression. So I came back to California and joined another little startup in '85 called Sun Microsystems. So at the time it was just a couple of hundred people all in one building, and I was lucky enough to be there for 13 years and just see how a company would go from a small startup, with just a few $1 million in revenue to being a multi-billion-dollar company. So it was a fantastic 13-year experience. My last position there was general manager of a business unit. So I had the full view from being probably the lowest, youngest, least experienced engineer that they hired at the time to be a general manager. So that for me was a great experience. So after that, in 1999, I left to do my first venture-backed startup called Velogic, and we raised $3 million from Advanced Technology Ventures and Crescendo. And within 18 months, we had an offer to be acquired for $100 million. And then due to the vagaries of the market and the bubble, that offer became more $50 million and $80 million, and then it went up and down. But it was a very successful exit for our VCs who made 17 times their money, and kind of left me with a good taste for doing startups. But after spending a year at the acquiring company, I decided that I wanted to do another startup. So I left, and while I was planning my next company, I got in touch with Google, where Eric Schmidt, who used to be my boss at Sun Microsystems and Wayne Rosing, invited me to go in for an interview. And I liked the environment so much that I decided to join Google as Senior Director of Engineering. I liked Google a lot. I was put in charge after 3 months of the AdWords program that now makes billions of dollars. So that was very exciting. But as much as I liked the company and the culture, I thought that Google was going to be a tremendous success with or without me. And deep in my heart, I'm an entrepreneur, so I thought, well, instead of being part of Google, why don't I try to make a Google-like company in a space that I'm really passionate about, and that's software development tools. And that's how Agitar started.
So you left Google, left your stock options at Google, formed a new company with your. How did that happen? Did you have a
Yeah. So while I was at Google, we had this challenge. We had 200 developers, 3 people in QA, quality assurance, and so when you have a product that is as successful as Google Ads, it's making millions of dollars, you're very nervous about modifying the software, without testing it, because if you make a mistake, if this website goes down for a couple of hours, that could be a few $100,000 or a few $1 million. So I got very interested in this idea of developer testing, asking software developers to create their own tests. It's a very nice thing to do to have this so-called unit test, but developing them manually, as we found out, takes 3 to 4 times more code to write the test than to write the code itself. So developers, even though they understand the benefits of testing, they don't like to pay the price. And for me as a manager, another challenge is I had a growing body of software tests. How do I manage them? How do I know which tests are good, which tests are bad? And so at the time, I thought, well, let me start to do some work in this area. And I tried to hire my co-founder from Velogic, who had also become free, was willing to do another startup. So I tried to bring him into Google, but at the same time, he was trying to pull me out and do another startup. So I did the unthinkable. And even before I vested any options at Google, I left to start Agitar. And in Italian we have a saying that luck favors the brave and the fool. So I must be in one of those categories, because since I left Google, we've been very lucky. We got funding from Sequoia for our first round at a very nice valuation. I was able to assemble a first-rate team and run out with a product and a company that's going very well. And part of that is from all the things that I've learned at Sun, but also coupled with all the things that I've learned at Google. Google is much more of a 21st company, and I try to integrate as much of the Google culture into Agitar, and I think that's been a key reason for our success. And as we go forward, I'll be happy to tell you a bit more about that.
Right. Okay. Great. So you left Google. The next day, you're forming Agitar as a new company. There were just two of you at that point, were there?
That's right. So my personal belief is if you want to do a startup, you shouldn't stay at your current company. The first reason may be a moral reason or a legal reason, right? You sign a document that whatever you develop for the company you work for, belongs to the company. So I didn't think it was the right thing to do. But more importantly, there is this famous story of a general that just landed his troops on the beach and then burnt the ships and said, well, okay, we cannot go back now. So we either win or we die here. And I think that's what you have to do. If you do a startup, you have to have a full commitment. If you still have one foot into your safe day-to-day job, I don't think you have the motivation to go and do that. So when we decided to do a startup, I took what was probably the hardest career decision of my life, to leave Google, not just for the money. The money is nice, but just I love the people and the culture. But I thought, there can be more than one Google-like company around. So I left with a clean slate. Took 2 weeks of vacation. So did my co-founder, because we know we were in for a long haul. And after that, we sat down, and the first step is to come up with a business plan and idea. And of course, we had the general idea in this area of development tools and test automation. So once we had the idea and the first 10 PowerPoint slides and a 3-page business plan summary, we went to our lawyer, who happens to be Mario Rosati at Wilson Sonsini Goodrich Rosati, one of the big firms here. And I think for entrepreneurs, it's very important at the very early stages to create a relationships with lawyer, because they can they can help you get incorporated many times without you having to pay upfront. So they will incorporate, and then if you're successful in getting funded, they can pay you later. But more importantly, they can introduce you to VCs. And if you don't have any previous experience, it's rather difficult for VCs to take your unsolicited business plan. But an introduction from a lawyer is worth a lot, because the lawyer, by incorporating and taking you on without any payment, is already an indication that you're not a complete flake, right? Because they don't like to lose money. So if a lawyer takes you up and recommends you to a VC, chances are that you've passed that first level in terms of qualifications.
So at this point, you didn't have the product prototype or anything. You had PowerPoints. Mario Rosati introduced you to the VCs, and he had a business plan sort of sketched out. Exactly.
Yeah. When we talked to Mario, we did not have a prototype, but what we did have is a successful startup under our belt, and every time you make VC some money, I think they're willing to let you play again. My co-founder also had a PhD in object-oriented testing, which is our area of expertise. I did a lot of work in that area at Sun Microsystems. So it was a space that we knew very well, and more importantly, a space that we were passionate about, with some very strong accomplishment records and successful products. So for us, with this background, we didn't have to prove too much. But as a starting point, yes, at least 10 PowerPoint slides to sort of give people the general idea of what the business is like. If it's your first startup, if you haven't run a business before, if you haven't taken money, you probably need to have a little bit more than that. But at the time, we did not have the prototype.
So how did your VC introductions go? Did you team up with the first VCs that you found, or did you have to go and visit several?
No, we talked to about 5 VCs. You know, some of the VCs are the ones that invested in us before, so we went and contacted them. And then our lawyer Mario Rosati introduced us to a few more VCs, including Sequoia. And at first, Sequoia did not want to see us. As you know, one of the highest ranked firms, you know, probably the highest ranked firm, investors in Google and the Yahoo and the Cisco. So, you know, for us, getting funded by Sequoia is like getting, Francis Ford Coppola to direct your movie. You know, it's as good as it gets.
Right.
So the first call from the lawyer, said they looked at the business plan, and said, well, it doesn't sound that interesting. But fortunately, Mario called again and got us an actual meeting. And then after we had that meeting, I think our personality, and our enthusiasm did not come across in the business plan, but when they actually saw us in person, Sequoia got very excited. And even though we did talk to other firms, they were the ones that moved the quickest. They liked the space. It was very easy for them to do a reference check for us, because we'd done this before, and I was at Google, so they were investors in Google. So everything lined up, and within a couple of weeks, we had a deal with them. So it went very well. We consider ourselves very lucky.
But did you even have the company formed at this stage? Had Mario formed the corporation? And
that's right.
The name?
The two things were going in parallel. Mario was forming the corporation while we started talking to VCs. Once you abandon the job, your benefits and your regular paycheck ends, and you see your savings go down. So you have to do things in parallel. You have to get as many things moving as possible. So we were incorporating, presenting to VCs, developing the prototype, and making all of our alternate plans at the same time.
Right. So the whole process from starting coming back from vacation and working on the business plan and then raising the funds, how long did that take?
It was probably just 4 to 6 weeks until we had the money.
Wow.
In the bank, yeah. And as I said, it was quite extraordinary.
Wow.
But your mileage may vary.
Right. Okay. So then money goes in the bank. What happens then? Did the VCs force you to hire a team, and what happened when they after you raised the funding?
No, I think the VCs were they knew that we had done this before. So in fact, Doug Leone, our VC at Sequoia, was very liberal with us. We told him, I told him up front, I don't want to be the long-term CEO. I'm a technical person, so we plan to hire a CEO, but let's wait a year or so, because right now it would be an unnecessary expense. Instead, we focus on hiring the core technical team for going from prototype to the actual product. And there again, it was very useful. If you've already worked in the past, you can call upon people that you know very well. So the first few hires are so important that if you can reduce the risk to zero by hiring people with whom you've worked before and they know exactly how well they're going to do, you should go ahead and do that. So we were lucky. We had 2 people from our previous companies, both at Sun and at Velogic, that came on board. And so we had the core engineering team. Then something that I recommend any entrepreneur after they get funding to do is to find a great office manager or what we call here the director of business operation. This is a person that will free the CTO or the CEO from worrying about all the little details of running the business, from the offices, setting up the phone lines, all the billing, the banking, etc., etc. Some people try to save by saying, we don't need an office manager, but I always find that having, a super assistant that just runs the company is essential. So we were very lucky to hire somebody named Beth Kaiser that has made our life tremendously easy from the first day, and now we're into our 3rd year to this day. We were free to focus on building the company and building the technology rather than all the very cumbersome infrastructure that comes with having a company, right? There are legal requirements, there are financial and accounting requirements, which I don't find very interesting, and that if you end up being distracted by them, you're not going to move as fast. So we hired the core team, we hired the product manager. So within 3 months, we had 6 or 7 people, and that was all we needed to go and move the ball forward. And and go from prototype to the actual product. So once you have the core people, the core team, you can start adding people more leisurely. And for the key hires, you cannot be under pressure. So for us, the next key hires were the VP of marketing and of course the CEO, because I was not interested to do that job long term. So for that, the VCs were tremendously useful. Recruiting well-known, highly experienced people into a startup is not easy, especially if they already have existing jobs. And having a name like Sequoia behind us at the time helped us to hire first a VP of marketing that used to be Mark DeVisser, who used to be the VP of marketing at Red Hat, public company, and he actually lived in North Carolina, so he actually had to move his entire family over here. I don't think it would have happened if we were not funded by a first-rate VC, and we had a first-rate idea. And also, Sequoia helped us find our CEO, Jerry Rudison, who actually started with us as a board member. And since his background was at a company called Rational, where he was VP of marketing, very much in our space, we liked each other, and we decided that he would also make he would be more useful to us as a CEO than as a board member. So he became our CEO, and now we've been around for 3 years. We have about 60 people, 7 quarters of nicely growing revenues. And we're in pretty good shape. We did the second round of funding with another great VC, New Enterprise Associates, and we have Peter Morris on our board. And that also went very well and very quickly, partly because we have, I believe, such an experienced team and a good product.
So Sequoia introduced you to NEA, did they? And did they help structure that relationship? That's
right. And also our CEO at his previous startup, he had both Sequoia and NEA as an investor. So it really helps. If you've done this before, the contacts and the connections are probably the most important people. And if people know about you, they know that you're not a flake. Venture capitalists don't like risk. There is some confidence in knowing that somebody has been a CEO before for 3 years, and did a good job, or has been a CTO for a number of years and has done a good job. There are so many risks in funding a startup. If at least you can eliminate the people risk, you'll be in great shape.
So let's talk about the board of directors and the board of advisors. Did you have a board of advisory board as well?
Yes, we had an advisory board, mostly technical people. What we do is our product is based on Java technology, so we address Java developers. So the biggest technical name in Java is James Gosling, the Sun Microsystems senior fellow, VP of engineering, superstar. And we were very lucky to get him as one of our advisors. And then we had a number of other advisors that were experts in the field to form the advisory board. Now, on the board of directors, it was pretty simple. Typically, one of the founders, and in this case it's myself, the CEO represents the company, and then each investor adds one person. And so we have a board consisting of 4 people, 2 from inside the company and 2 VCs, and it's been working very, very well.
Wow. 4, I thought that 5 would be odd numbers were better on the board. But
odd numbers are preferable. Right. We're looking to add a 5th member, but as long as things go well and we are in sync, I'd rather be, I don't just want to add another person just to have the right number of people.
So did you, when you were originally forming the team and negotiating with the investors and preparing the business plan, did you have a clear picture of an exit route for this company? Did you say, this is a company that will be acquired by X, or this is a company that we think we're going to IPO at a certain time? Was that a clear picture in your mind, or did you just think that this was going to be valuable at some point?
No, we had a clear picture. We knew it was going to be valuable because we're addressing a difficult problem in a tough space, and we're very good at it. So it's not one of those situations where people may be interested in this or not, or there may or may not be a problem. What the idea of automating software testing is something that people desperately need. In terms of exit strategy, because both myself and my co-founder already had a successful acquisition. Our CEO and our VP of marketing already have been in companies that had successful IPOs. This time we just want to go all the way. So the exit strategy that we have in mind for Agitar is to have an IPO. And furthermore, I didn't leave Google to start a little piddly company. I want to have a company that's going to be the Google in our space. So we want to be the Google in the software development market. So it's not just an IPO, but the vision to have hopefully a multi-billion-dollar company. And so far things, everything that had to happen has happened correctly. It's a long way before we can go there, but so far the results are encouraging.
Great. So the culture of the company, and as the team's grown, how have you been able to control the culture in the company, or have you adopted cultures from other companies? How's that developed?
Yeah, as I mentioned, I was really impressed by some aspects of the Google culture, and I can go into, let's pick 4 of them. The first one is the kind of problem that you pick, right? And the problem that we pick is a very technically challenging problem, which is good because I can have 200 people with PhDs working on the area of automated test generation for the next 50 years, and we still will not have solved all the problems. So it's a big, hairy problem, and we also have an opportunity to do something, to have a quantum jump over the existing solution, as Google did. When Google came out, Alta Vista used to be the hot search engine, and when people tried Google, there was immediately a noticeable difference. But I think for a startup, it's not enough to pick a big, real problem and to have a quantum jump. You have to make sure that whatever advantage you gain with your initial product is something that you can sustain. So you cannot just leapfrog the competition one. You have to continue leapfrogging them. And that calls not only for the big problem, but an attitude of continuous innovation and investing in a problem that you can solve technologically by tackling very difficult problems that some companies in the past may have overlooked or not have put as much intellectual resources as the problem required. Everybody knows that Google has now probably hundreds of PhDs because the problems that they solve are very, very big. And same in our company. We don't have hundreds of PhDs yet, but the problem is big enough that we have an opportunity of, if we make a massive investment, we're going to have a significant improvement that's going to change the problem we solve in a very radical way. And then we become not only a successful company, but a company that can keep the edge over the competition going forward, because there are no other companies that are planning to invest as much as we are technologically in this area. So technology is the one aspect of the culture. We're a technology-driven company. The other one is, hiring, right? Everybody says we just hire the best people, the top 10%. But you really, when you go and look at most startups, they very quickly compromise, right? They need an engineer to do X, Y, or Z, and as soon as they find somebody that just is passable, they hire them. At Google, I learned the hard way, what it means to interview, both as an interviewee and then later as one of the people that interviewed. And the interview cycle at Agitar is extremely thorough, especially on engineering. We tend to hire people that are nerds like us, right? People that, enjoy reading Scientific American, if you ask them what's 2 to the 34th, they can probably tell you, and they can tell you, what is pi to 20 digits. I don't know exactly why that works, but if we hire those people, what happens, the culture that we like and that we have established seems to promulgate itself. We just hire people like us, and so the culture remains steady. I know there are people that say you should hire people different from you, but at least on the side of technology, I find that if we hire people with the same nerdish tastes, it works very well. And our statistics, for every position that we have, we interview 20 candidates and we typically make one offer. So it's a big burden, but the result is that we have not made a false hire yet in engineering, and that makes a big difference. Then, of course, once you have the people, what are the other parts of the culture? You want to keep them happy and motivated. And so parts of the culture from Google that we took is this idea of feeding employees lunch. It's just so obvious. I don't understand why more startups or companies in general don't do it. It may cost you $10, $15, but everybody stays in the office. You meet at lunch. You talk to people to whom you ordinarily would not talk. And I think the benefits to the company are great. Employees love the fact that they don't have to worry about brown bagging their lunch or going out. And so we do that. In fact, and after lunch, we have another part of the culture is we have the company walk. So whoever wants to go for a walk after lunch, we go around the local street. Company is very important. We try to hire very upbeat people and energetic people. So I really look forward to coming into work because I like everybody that we have here.
I noticed, do you, all the development team is here, right? What do you think of offshore development teams and having teams split up over distance like that? Is that a strategy that you...
I think for a startup, that would be a very big mistake, especially in the first 1 or 2 years when the product is taking shape. I mean, the face-to-face interaction is so important. I could not imagine doing it with half my team here or half my team in some other remote location. I think it becomes possible after you're established and maybe you have some maintenance engineering or some other engineering tasks that you can outsource. But I would rather have 3 engineers, in the same room with me than having 30 engineers working remotely.
Was there any pressure from the investors to do offshore development?
Yes, they bring it up occasionally, but the way I answer is to say, look how much we've done with this very small group of people because we hire the best. And at least in software engineering, the difference between a poor, an average, and a great developer is like 1 to 10 to 100. So if you have 20 great developers, which I believe we have, they don't cost you a lot and we produce much.
So now we have the development team in place, the product's shipping, you've got the sales and marketing up and running. What are the key milestones that the company's working on today?
Good. So, as you mentioned, we have all those things in place. We already have a large number of happy customers, a lot of marquee names. We've won a bunch of awards that made us feel very good. Because it's not just enough to create a product. We want to create a cool product, something that people like and they go, wow, when they use it. I didn't think that this could be done. So we have all that, and the next step is just going for profitability. And that's what I think one of the most difficult decisions that an entrepreneur and a startup has to make, the balance between growth and profitability, right? You could slow down hiring and try to be profitable, but then you're missing some opportunities. So pretty much every week I think, boy, I would love to have 20 more engineers because I have 3 more projects that I would like to do and fund, and at the same time I realize that if we do that, it would postpone profitability. So that's our next big milestone, and we personally I changed my opinion on a regular basis. Sometimes I think it would be great to have it, but then when I think, I cannot do any of these projects, I think, well, let's go and invest and get big. I think every company will have to decide that for themselves.
Right. What were the key things that you think the company did well and to generate this momentum? There's a lot of momentum, there's a lot of positive press and awards and things like that about the company. How did you achieve that?
I think at the core, you have to have a passion for the product. And I can tell you, we didn't do Agitar just for the money. I mean, if we wanted money, I would have stayed at Google. My co-founder would have stayed at his other company. There has to be a passion, and as I mentioned, you have to have an idea or an approach to the problem that is very radical and unique, and you have to believe that you can make it happen. And I think that's what we've done. Google sort of woke up the search space that nobody considered it cool or very interesting to invest in until Google came around, and they made it cool because they showed, look, if you actually invest and you set these impossible goals of indexing billions of pages and returning results in a fraction of a second and have those results actually be relevant, you don't just have a better search. Search turns into something completely different. It becomes an essential tool rather than something an adjunct to your daily activities. So similarly, in our space, we realize testing is done in these particular ways. We can automate it in a way that has never been done before, and essentially change the rules of the game. The product we developed called Agitator. See, also you have to have a cool name, an evocative name. Agitator. We take your software, we shake it up to find the bugs and the problems, so your customers don't have to deal with them. So it's a combination of a cool product driven by people that have done it before. Not necessary, but in an area as complicated as ours, it really helps to have that experience. And then again, hire the best. Our VP of marketing is great. He's done it before. He's worked at companies like Borland and Red Hat that know how to generate buzz, and they were already cool companies. Same thing with our CEO. If you've done it before, there is a certain plan that you follow. You have to be in front of the analysts, you have to be in front of the press, and you cannot just hope to have a great product that people will discover. The product development and marketing have to work together to generate the buzz and get people to pay attention to your product.
And taking that buzz and momentum to international markets, how are you managing to do that? Do you have a strategy to approach global markets?
Yes, so we already have offices in Asia Pacific and Europe, sales offices, and that's one of those other areas like growth versus profitability, where you have to decide now is the time to go and expand internationally. In our case, it was easy because there were two great VP of sales from a company called Rational, that has been acquired by IBM, and they wanted to join a startup. And so it was very opportunistic. So where the VP of sales for Rational in Asia Pacific became our VP of sales, and the same thing for our European operation. And it's kind of nice how the ecosystem of startups and established companies happen. A company, like Rational starts as a little startup, then becomes a multi-billion-dollar company, then gets acquired. And a lot of people that like the startup environment then sort of leave the acquiring company to go and join other startups. So there is this continuous recycling, and that's I think that's great. That's what keeps things going.
Okay, great. What would you advise? When you're advising budding entrepreneurs that are thinking of starting out on this journey, what would be the key things? Would you advise people to leave Google and start their own technology startups, or and if they did, what would be the main things that you'd like to tell them before they embark on the journeys of their own?
Yeah, it's easy to say you should leave the company and do things on your own. Some people cannot afford to do that. So I was fortunate that some room to play there. If you want to be an entrepreneur, though, the best thing would be to just leave your current situation, because especially if your employer has you sign a contract that anything that you invent belongs to the employer, I would say it's unethical, and more importantly, it could create problems for you down the road, where an investor may say, "Oh, you have this great invention, but were you not a XYZ employee when you did that?" And if you answer yes, then it may raise some questions. So I think in terms of startup, you need to have as clean a sheet of paper as possible, right? You have to have a clean track record. You have to have clear ownership of the idea. So if you can afford to do it, that's by far the best thing to do. Make sure that you're very passionate about the problem that you're going to solve. And if you really do it for the money, there are going to be many times where the energy will run out, or you'll have enough obstacles that you're just going to give it up. So for Agitar, we're clearly hoping for a very nice exit strategy, but for me, the satisfaction of having created what I believe is the best, more powerful, most innovative automated test generation tool that has ever existed. For me, that's already a tremendous accomplishment, right? We went to the VC and said, if you give us a few $1 million, we're going to build this amazing product. We've built this amazing product. If you don't have that passion and that drive and that vision for the product, I don't think you're ready for the startup. Also, not just Google, but before you leave your current company, you have to think, have I learned enough? For me, I was at Sun for 13 years before doing my first venture-backed startup. And while I was there, I was observing. I always had in the back of my mind the idea of being an entrepreneur. But it really helps if you have a track record. So if you can go to a VC and say that I've been at this company for this many years and I've had not only technical experience, but management experience, maybe some general management experience, is really going to help. And I think it will be different from person to person. Some people can be just extremely successful, fresh out of school, do a startup, and have it work. Other people prefer to build a solid foundation before they do that. And that's my preferred path.
Right. Okay. Well, thanks very much for your time, and congratulations on getting the company to this point. And wish you the best of luck with Agitar in future. Thanks
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Yeah. a key part of our culture is to serve lunch to the team. You know, a well-fed company is a happy company, and this is useful not only because people don't have to leave for lunch, you know, and take a couple of hours, but it's also a big part of the day where we communicate, exchange, you know, work tidbits, and actually most of the time we just talk about things that are completely unrelated to work. But it really helps build the cohesiveness of the team, and it's something that everybody looks forward to. So here's the food. It gets catered in every day, and some days it's better than others, but people come for the experience more than the food. So today we have some decent food. So we have a packed house, and as you can see, most of the people are here eating. And guys, say hi to the camera. Hi. Hi, camera. Hi. So I told them to act happy and look busy for the shot. And as
so good. I'm sending a message to the health department right now.
And this is also where we have our all hands meeting, and sometimes we have after lunch we have technical talks and other presentations. So the focal point of the company at lunchtime, and on Friday we have a beer bash where we sit around and we have, you know, some nice snacks and beer. And this is where the people that you usually don't meet or talk to during the day, this is where you have an opportunity to go and meet with them and have interesting conversations.